Hi, my name is Christine Pierce, and I own Unwind Body and Mind as well as Remediating the Rustbelt.com, which is what I want to talk about today. I went to a high school marketing class today and presented what I want to give you right now, and then I'll try to piece it apart for bite-sized individual pieces at a later date to put online. So I kind of went through this with the end goal being to entice young kids to want to take a chance to save their future, really, to give them a way that they can come together and use the resources and the skill set that they already have to make a difference in the world that they will inherit. Because I really always thought that if you give the kids a way to succeed and change their future, they will take it. And today I wanted to do this today, right now, because I had the shirt on that I went in there. It actually took me a long time to figure out what I was going to wear. And even though this isn't what I would normally choose to present to somebody, it really does make a difference. I like to walk my talk, and it's really hard sometimes. But I do want to hug more trees, clean our seas, and save the bees. Um, and so that's what I'm trying to do. And my model is to go from disaster recovery to disaster avoidance and make a whole shift so that instead of being reactive, we can start to become a proactive society. So, from disaster recovery to disaster avoidance, my model uses free resources to remediate and improve a community's soil and water. It transforms waste into resources, saves money, begins the disaster avoidance movement, simultaneously creates an eco-oasis addressing food shortages, and urges local high school and the community talent, so not just students, but the, the collective community talent, to create a core group to work with city and state experts, a landscape architect, and a permaculture expert seasoned in creating hugelkultur beds to address problematic civil engineering obstacles. We would create a group, and the group designs solutions and coordinates yard waste and free tree trimmings to maximize efficiency. Food waste and cardboard can become the chef's kiss of these raised beds that would be created, and hugelkulturs, which become these beds, require little to no water for maintenance. Permaculture experts choose plants for food, medicine, pollinator preference, and for their ability to absorb, direct, and filter inevitable floodwaters. This shift to disaster avoidance lowers the city's insurance rating, saving residents thousands in premiums. It eliminates disaster recovery line items from the budget, potentially. Project days can be coordinated through chipdrop.com or via district networking for yard material, food waste, and cardboard assets. Yard waste is no longer a cost to be processed. And in our case, I think it goes to a neighboring community, so we may have to pay for it to get sent there. So it's no longer a cost to process, but rather maximized to serve the community itself. Core team leads project days. Additional volunteers would learn to build hugelkultur beds, benefit planting, and landscape designs. So we would have a smaller core group that works with the experts and manages the plan itself. And then we could have others, volunteers, that would help on those project days that want to learn how to build a hugelkultur or to learn how to make a swale or a berm on their own yard. Skidsters could do the heavy lifting of trees and branches while students weave materials together to create a new, beautifully strategic landscape to serve and protect areas once considered problematic. They would redirect tons from the landfill, builds the health of the soil, and filters water runoff. This is more cost avoidance, creates future disaster avoidance experts. So this could create a field that has never been done before. So this is a wide open opportunity for people to build and get these skill sets to where they understand the flow of water and know how to build the pathway to direct it where we want it to go. So in a flood, it's gonna go there, right? We can try to capture all we want, but it's eventually, if we have problems, we're gonna continue having problems. So how better to redirect or absorb and filter more of these problematic areas and use it to our advantage versus having a disaster that we have to deal with year after year because we're not taking care of it at the root cause. So create future disaster avoidance experts. They're be equipped with a unique problem-solving skill set, empowered to co-lead a second smaller project. So after this one collective is done, then some of those students that are going for the expert, they can then break off into groups of say 3. A smaller parcel could then, another problematic area, they could then come up with ideas with the skill set that they learned on this bigger project, collectively come up, and say, yeah, that's a great idea, or combine the ideas, however they want to do it, and then go and lead their own smaller project to get more experience, um, feel more empowered and more confidence in what they can do. Then lead a third independent project in the community or even take the skill set somewhere else. I already brought up the new industry, so this would be brand new to anyone instead of, we always have disaster recovery plans for big businesses, but we don't actually have disaster avoidance of, like the inevitable of things are going to happen. It's just, how can we make it less impactful? They would be empowered to lead and teach similar projects in the community or exponential growth in the movement in surrounding areas across the US or abroad. I'll get into that in a minute. They can also backfill important positions within the city or the state. Currently, we don't really have a model for this. So when experts want to retire, we could actively be building this skill set from within the city, within the city's resource, to start backfilling these positions, or even just, build up our current skill set. Mycoremediation is the cleaning of earth or water using mushrooms. So remediate blighted sites for more disaster avoidance and astronomical cost savings and cost avoidance. And reclaim land previously considered unusable. Gary is prime pickings for this because they have something like 1,500 blighted sites and some way bigger than others. Some cost maybe 15,000 a year to have security watch, and essentially they just have the cities, they just have this land sitting and it can't be used. It's just that line item stays on there forever, and they have no choice but to continue paying it because they're not actively changing. On to the next section, saving the dunes. Collect and crush glass using solar-powered pumps and grinders. Use mycoremediation and bioremediation using plants, plus nearby lake or river water to clean both water and the glass sand we created. Scaled to potential, this process creates an aesthetically pleasing landscape and reverses the billion-dollar erosion problem of the entire South Basin of Lake Michigan. Because we're not getting that sand coming down from Michigan that used to come and build up the dunes, which is why we had Mount Baldy. When we put in the big industry along the lake, they built break walls and changed the flow of the sand. So now we don't have that pack anymore that used to protect the shore. Now we have this erosion problem, and we have where buildings are falling into the lake right now. So that is something that's a very big problem, and it's a billion-dollar program, if not more. It's billions of dollars, billion-dollar problem. So scaled to potential, this creates an aesthetically pleasing landscape and reverses that problem. Potential reversal within 3 years, adding to shoreline soon after. And the benefits are simultaneous benefits: cleans water, builds structure, eliminates the algae blooms, improves tourism dollars, and the local flora and fauna populations flourish and multiply. Rolling right back into the lakefront itself is these lakefront giants. That's the next section. So I used to work for BP, and I was the records and information manager for the site. And one of the projects it was leading up to the big project. It's been so long now, I don't remember what it was, but essentially building the third largest refinery and the second largest refinery. And so when I was going out there, I had to go to all the different units and talk to the people. What's your records? What's your process? What do you do? So I really did get a very good 50,000-foot view of the process as a whole. So that's just the way that I look at things. I want to see the whole picture, and I talked with all these guys, and I knew that even though this piece of information didn't make sense to me right now, it didn't matter. I knew that in some conversation in the future, it was going to matter. So lakefront giants like BP and the mills can work with me for opportunities I've already found in their process. And any one person does not need everything, right? Compensation on savings of millions of dollars, a percentage of that, it doesn't really have to be that high to be able to make an impact. And this is the impact that I really want to make, right? Is the world around me. If I were to make a whole lot of money again, I would just be making that money so that I could do the things that I like to do anyways. I like to garden and do permaculture and feed the bees and help people learn to love them. And, so that's just who I am. So my line items already line up with what we really should be doing with the world that we've inherited. So I've already found ample opportunity for them to be able to save a lot of money, cost savings, cost avoidance, especially with this remediation, right? So let's say a compensation of about 8 to 10% of their cost savings and cost avoidance. They're not going to have to be paying this anyways. They were always going to have to pay this. So 8 to 10% of the savings over the next 10 years, because it's continuous. They're going to be saving that money, and some of it is going to take a return on investment. It might take 2-3 years. So, and since most of this is going to community services, they get the added benefit of changing the world around them just by supporting it, and supporting it in ways that really work. So specifically allocated to support the community around them. So let's say it's 3% goes to their own local community, and it can go to purchase materials for competitions to create better, more effective filtration systems and maximize efforts around them. So if they've destroyed some of their community's environmental assets, they can now clean them up very easily and have a better view from the outside, right? Their PR becomes a whole lot better. Rebuild community pride and add beauty, function, and protection. Remediate their own blighted sites, exponentially decreasing fines. 1% maybe to support Paul Stamit's micro-remediation research and project goals, or other things that he wants to support. So micro-remediation is huge, and he's not the only one, but he really was the pioneer to so much research. And I really respect this man, and he's got a wonderful team. There's just so much potential there. And as such, everything I do that I use mushrooms with really does kind of go back to him. And I want him and his research and his goals and dreams to be funded. So I don't think it's much to ask for the man that kind of put this all together and came up with this. And again, there's so many amazing mushroom experts, and they should all be supported. But that's just where I really want to focus, is to help him. And then if he wants to then, support other micro remediation efforts, that's his go-to. So 1% maybe to support appropriate disaster recovery efforts. So like one of the last hurricanes hit Jamaica very hard, and I really was trying to come up with a lot of this with Jamaica in mind. So providing glass to sand filtration systems to repair their coastline damage and clean contaminated water, or provide bucket filtration systems so families can quickly access clean drinking water after emergencies. So, just at any moment, these resources could go out, because you don't want to send bottled water. It's a one-time use, plus there's trash now. Whereas if there's bucket filtration systems already, someone already created them. If we could support these hit disaster areas with a bucket system that is, they just pour in dirty water and then they have water for their whole family, right? They have a resource for their entire, to get back on their feet. And then the crushing the glass sand, that not only can build up the structure, but they can plant in, and restructure their damaged coastline. Say 1% to onboard sister sites, sister industries oversight without regulation. For example, those polluting the Ganges River. And micro-remediation could also serve as a free food source or medicine source. Some mushrooms, because they're problem solvers. Mushrooms will take a problem and break it down into its base components. So Paul talks about 3 different samples, and 2 of them used chemicals while his used mushrooms. And while they turned black and nasty, they covered it with a tarp to keep it nice and moist, let the mycelium run. And then when they came and opened it up like a week later, it had mushrooms, or at least the starts of it. And so, and it was diesel fuel. So these mushrooms started breaking apart the diesel fuel into base components that are no longer toxic. So then, he tells the story, and eventually it, starts bringing in birds and bugs, and and they were very happy mushrooms, he said, because, they're eating it, and then they're growing and doing good things on the earth. So anyways, when you look at it like that, certain mushrooms are medicinal, certain mushrooms are food, and the oyster mushrooms, which are one of the most aggressive cleaners, they become food sources. So even though they're growing on things that may be toxic, their fruit is no longer toxic. So some of these things could go into that, providing food for nations that don't have food. So these sister sites overseas, some of them don't have regulations, and like the Ganges River is essentially a dying river, or if it's not dead. And so some of these countries don't have the regulations we do, and they're just, killing the rivers. But if we could give 1% and start up one of the factories over there that is like prime target of, we really need to remediate this, and show them that they can also save money by doing the right thing, we can incentivize, or at least throw in some filters in the river, do whatever, and potentially it grows that movement over there. 1% to provide river filters at high impact locations further upstream here. So within our bigger outreaching communities, putting these filters in areas that are ripe for the picking, that are throwing out a lot of the toxic chemicals and toxic waste that ends up making it into our river. And now, what I did with some of these calculations was, what happens if the refineries kind of take care of that lake, right, with their processes, changing their processes and whatever. But what happens when we start to filter the water further and further upstream? And that means that it's like 60% of the pollution that's in the lake doesn't even make it there. So when you start thinking about that, it's really coming from the inlet arteries that is the main component. And so if we start putting in filtration systems on our way to the lake, then that's when it really starts. It was like 2 to 3 years where we start having a reversal of, then we have less erosion. We start building up shoreline, and we start eliminating those algae blooms because it all works together. So, and then 1 to 3 for my discretion. So for my work and for anything else, the bees, the trees, I can just, but I think that really, if we do that for the water, and I think maybe like a percentage for maybe one of their sister sites in another state, because like refineries, they have several different refineries around, like BP's got another one in Ohio and Texas City, and I don't know if they changed by now, but usually one refinery is going to have another sister one at a different location. Again, just making the impact bigger and bigger and bigger. Riprap is a easy win for highways, for states and cities, whoever wants to use it, but really for the state highways and bridges. Bridges over waterways especially, and railroads. And this will deal with like the oily runoff, salts, whatever, contamination of road runoff. Use plants, mushrooms, and SCOBY technology, which if you've had kombucha, that's what SCOBY is, to create a beautiful gradual water filtration system. Form and function. Add beauty to the surrounding area that simultaneously cleans soil and the water entering waterways. Improve the structure, function, which is function, of the riprap itself as it builds an interconnected structural network that locks everything into place. We have a bridge over the lake here in town, and its riprap is just rocks. Like it's sitting next here in my presentation, but it's just rocks, and there's nothing actually digging or burrowing into it at the time being. But we can maximize that, especially around waterways, to clean the oil that spills down during storms. So everything coming from our cars, the rubber, the oil, the gas, all that. Again, mushrooms like to eat things we don't want to. They eat toxic things and make them not toxic anymore. So, so it would start out with certain plants that maybe don't need to be watered very often. Make them, perennial and whatever. So gradually coming down the slope. And then it would get into ones that either drink a lot of water right there at the base, and mushrooms and different things. I think morel mushrooms actually like to take out heavy metals, so that's something really easy. They usually just grow along railroad tracks anyways, and that's perfect for them. That's perfect area, so you could seed them. And when it gets closer and closer to the lip of the waterway, it's SCOBY technology. So it would be essentially creating this rim of substrate, and it could be anything, plant material, really. So similar to the yard waste, and it could be put down by boats because you can't really get down to some of the areas, but you can go up in boats and then pack this substrate down and then inoculate it with tea and SCOBY, which is so SCOBY is like symbiotic culture OB, bacterial yeast. It's a combination of things. And what SCOBY does is it lives in liquid versus mushrooms really live in the earth. So, but scobies will do the same thing. A vinegar is a SCOBY. Vinegar breaks down greases. So it all kind of makes sense in my brain. And not only does it do that, and it only goes out so far, like to where you have the substrate, and it builds on top, right? And so it becomes this big rubbery thing that the plants then are able to take root in, suck up that moisture, suck up the, from the extra rains, soak it all up and filter the system, because then you can plant, good plants that are, let's say, what are those, cattails and, whatever. I mean, keeping in mind, choosing beautiful plants so that this becomes aesthetically pleasing as well as it's the form and function. So grants also cover this for easy wins and bring beauty to the form and function integrity of the landscape. So what that does then, back to the SCOBY, is it creates an interconnection for these plants to grow in and like makes it more structurally sound anyways. And then as it layers, because SCOBYs layer on top of each other, that base layer then just becomes soil and then settles into the rocks even more. So riprap is a really easy way to clean our roadways and into the water. Now I think this is it. Interns and high school community service hours. Because around here we are getting into community service for high schoolers, and sometimes it's the whole school, sometimes it is just chosen programs. But this is for interns and high school community service. This effort has incredible potential, seeking young talent with a desire to change the world, incredible hands-on experience, a chance to provide yourself, to prove yourself to the world in areas that in your own area of expertise. So you don't have to know what's going on. You can either find something that you want to learn about and go into that path, or you can bring your skills to the table and help make this change. So I might get into that a little later, so I'll just read on. You'll get a letter of recommendation for college or for a job. Ownership share opportunities for a stake in the game if they help to create it. That they helped to create. That is really only for the, not for community service, but that's for more of an internship. And I have my own business as well as building this. If people have a stake in the game, they are more likely to really stick with it and try to make it work. So we've given our kids, helicopter parents, and you can't do this until you're older, and kids don't even want to get their license until they're freaking 20 now. So I don't get me started. Don't start. But I've always thought that if you give kids the opportunity to change the world around them, that they will take it and they will make something of it if you give them the opportunity to change the situation, because it has to be, like I think I said before, debilitating, defeating, that there are so many of them and there's so little room to really make a difference. And we've just disheartened, their innate creativity, and we've just said, you're one of the masses and follow the rules and don't think, just regurgitate what you've been told. But they have the best ideas. They haven't been shut down to why things won't work or can't work because, we've always done this same way. They really do have the talent. So desired areas of expertise include project management, photography, web design, audiovisual, documentary, marketing, networking, community outreach, collaboration efforts with entities such as Save the Dunes and Shirley Hines, grants and funding, so much more. So that is what I presented to the class, and I have to change this a little bit to start presenting to city and state officials. But I have it right here for on the homepage right now at remediatingtherustbelt.com. Again, my name is Christine Pierce. I will try to chop this into little areas and piecemeal it out for, and just start spreading the word. If you're a company that wants to work with me, you think that I can help you save money or, save part of the environment. If you want to be part of this, please contact me. At the very bottom of this, I have a work with us, and it's got an email that asks you all kinds of questions like, why do you want to be involved? That's mostly for the, is mostly geared towards the interns and community service. But like I said, it's for anyone. And if you're a business that wants to work with me, just send me an email there and I'm happy to see what we can do. All right. Thank you so much. And I hope to hear from you. Okay. Bye.